Hello everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is Sierra from Sierra T Designs, and today I have these two really pretty cards to share with you. So let's jump right in. As always, I like to cut down my cardstock before I start doing anything, and I have some Hammermill cardstock here. I'm going to use that to do my blending on. And I'm cutting it down to be 1/4 of an inch shorter or smaller than an A2 base. And I am also going to cut down some black shimmer cardstock, and that's what I want to matte my white panel on. I just like how it looks. You could totally skip this step and not add a black matte. This is just kind of my preference. And this is going to be 1/8 of an inch smaller or shorter than an A2 size base, so that you only get about 1/8 of an inch border around the panel. And I am making two, as you guys saw. This is mostly just because I couldn't decide what I wanted for my Oxide Blend colors. So I ended up just making two cards since I had everything ready to go there anyway. And this is me just double checking my measurements for cutting my mat. I like to double check it while I've got everything out when I'm trimming. So just if I make a mistake, I can always just trim some more. So for my Oxide Blending, I have squeezed lemonade, carved pumpkin, and abandoned coral. And I also have a stencil here. This is from Waffle Flower. This is the Spotlight Circle stencil. And I love it. I'm looking at getting more of the I would think that they're like an essential in your crafty room, just because they create such a cool background without really putting much effort in. I mean, I lay down a stencil and do some blending, and then I get this beautiful circle of color. You could cut a mask if you don't have this stencil. The only problem I have with a mask is that I would have to either have cut two to make this card idea work, or you cut one, but then you might have some transfer of color. So, because you can't clean a mat, you can't clean them, right? Because it's paper. It's just sticky paper. So I actually already owned this stencil, but I'm slowly collecting these kind of essential stencils. At least that's what they are to me. I'm looking at the rectangle ones as well. I have a cool idea to use for those, but this is the only one I currently have, and I love it. I think it's a great idea. So for my second blend, and this one's a lot more of a whimsical color. The other one was kind of like a sunset or a sunrise. This set is Kitsch Flamingo, Salvaged Patina, and Mermaid Lagoon. And always I'm using my blending tools with my domed foams. Those are my preference for blending. You could use whatever you have in your stash. And I'm not trying for a super smooth blend. I like having the transition of color. I think it's really pretty. So I kind of just left it because you're only in this circle anyway. So, I mean, you could absolutely try for a smoother blend or different colors, whatever your preference is. This is really just kind of a cool design, I think. And I've had this stamp set from Simon Says Stamp for a little while, and I really wanted to use it, and I actually forgot about it for a minute. So I'm trying to go through my stash and use stamp sets that I haven't used recently or haven't used at all. So this was one of those. I bought it, and it sat there, and now I'm going to use it. And I have some other ideas for it. So you will see it pop up again here pretty soon, probably on my channel, but I am very excited about it. So I'm just going to blend through the colors, and I just go back and forth a little bit and just try to get kind of a consistent blend that I enjoy. And I did adhere the stencil to the back of my cardstock. I used tape on the back of the stencil to adhere my cardstock. And then I took this stamp set, which is the Forest Scenery stamp set. And I'm just pulling out a few images here. I have 2 trees and a little deer. And I've lined them up. You saw the transparency grid there. That's also from Simon. I used that just to line up my images so that I knew that they would fall exactly where I wanted them to around my kind of center blend. And I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black ink here. You could use any ink you like. You will end up seeing the oxide ink a little bit through the trees and whatnot. It doesn't bother me. I actually kind of like it. I think it looks really neat because you have the things layered. I like how it looks, but totally up to you. You could use a different dark ink that would stamp better over the oxides if you prefer. Or you could heat emboss if you wanted a more dark image. I like how this turned out, so I am perfectly happy with it, but by all means change it up to be what you would like it to be. And you do have to be aware that you're gonna need to let the ink dry that's on top of the oxide. The ink that's on the paper will dry quite quickly, but if it's sitting on top of another ink, it's not like drying into the paper quickly, so you need to give it a little bit of time to dry. So just be aware of that. So here I'm going to make a mistake. Originally, I have a sentiment here. And originally, I was going to have the sentiment just sit underneath the image and it was going to be all white. And as you guys saw from the beginning pictures, it's not like that. I had to white heat emboss the sentiment. And it's because the card was not perfectly in the bottom corner when I stamped it that first time. So when I go to stamp it my second time, it's going to shadow the sentiment. Pretty bad. I mean, not so bad that it's hideous, but bad enough that you can tell it that it's a mistake. So no problem. I'm going to fix it because I refuse to start over. And I hate that. So I did pull the sentiment out for my second card here, and I'm going to stamp down these 2 trees. You can see that I have 5 elements in the card, 4 trees and the deer. This is my preference, as you guys know if you've been with me for a little bit. I have a preference towards uneven numbers on cards, so that's why I would stick with 5, but you do whatever makes you happy with your designs. And I stamped these ones 3 times, and you're going to see in the end they are a bit darker. That's just intentional. See, and here I'm showing you that it just shadowed a bit. So I am going to stamp it out on some black cardstock here, the same sentiment. And this sentiment is from the Dandelion Messages stamp set. And I just love the mix of fonts because you'll see as I hold the card up later that it has that kind of whimsical font to it in the center and then just a nice bolder font for the rest of the words. And I love mixed fonts. I think that they're stunning. They're one of my favorite things, especially for sentiments. So I love this sentiment and I thought it was just beautiful. So I am now going to white heat emboss it on black cardstock. And I am using a super fine detail for this. Super, super fine because the words are quite small. And luckily this embossing powder did really well. This is the Ranger Superfine Detail White Embossing Powder. I don't use it for much other than sentiments because I really love it for that. Just because, again, the lines, like you're going to see here as I hold it up to melt them, the lines are tiny. So, and it did beautifully for that sentiment. So, great thing to have in your stash is a super fine detail embossing powder, whichever company you prefer. It doesn't really matter, whatever you guys like, and then I'm going to trim it out. So I am going to kind of turn this into a label, and I kind of have to eyeball a lot of this just because I don't have exact measurements. I'm just trying to keep it very tight to the sentiment. So I do have to eyeball it a bit and kind of guesstimate where to trim. But I think it turns out really pretty. And then here you're going to see I'm just going to hold it up and cover up the sentiment there. So, I mean, you should tell me, what do you think? Would this card design have looked better without the black, white, and heat embossed sentiment and just the original plan where I was just going to stamp it on the background if it hadn't a double stamped? Or do you like it with this kind of embossed sentiment instead? I'd love to know what you guys think. Which one do you prefer? And all that's left now really is to adhere everything down. So I've got my Beary art glue. It's just my preferred liquid glue right now. I jump between Nuvo and this. I like the tip. It comes with a super fine tip, so you don't have to buy it separately. So I think that's just awesome. And I'm just going to line everything up and do my kind of layers. And again, I have a tendency towards eyeballing this. It's just kind of, so I mean, it's half the time some of my stuff isn't perfect. I don't mind. I have never had someone come to me and tell me something's askew. I don't know anybody I would give a card to that would say something like that, first of all, but nobody's ever commented on it. And generally I can eyeball fairly well. I mean, it's not perfect. They're handmade with much love. If I send someone a card, it's made with a ton of love. So nobody's ever said anything about it. So yeah, I just adhered down my layers. I did start with my black matte, and then I just adhered my colored panel on top of that for both cards. And then because I can't resist, I don't know if you guys know this, but Studio Katia is a Canadian company, and I'm Canadian. And I have a tendency towards really supporting, well, I support all of the companies that I love, but I have fallen in love with their pearls. And this is just their Arctic, what are these ones? The Arctic Breeze pearls. So they're just this stunning white pearl. And I'm so in love with their pearls. I'm going to have to go and buy them all. But I had to add a couple of pearls to the background just because I can. And again, it's in 5. So there's my uneven number once again. And I just adhered them down with my wand there. And then I'm going to hold them up so you guys can see. So in the light, you can kind of see that it does have a bit of a sheen where the two inks have met, but I love it. I just think it looks really neat. You don't have to do that. You could use a different black ink that would not react to the oxide that way, but I like how it looks. I think that it adds some extra depth to the images, so I quite enjoy it. So that's the cards I have for you guys this week. I would love to know what you think. Leave me a like, leave me a comment. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. I do a new video every Monday, and then I join in on random hops and other stuff throughout the rest of the time. So thank you so much, guys. I will see you again soon, and goodbye for now. Bye-bye.